Sport! Friday at 7 p.m, your weekend sports on Talk Radio Europe with the Friday Sports Bar.
You're tuned into Talk Radio Europe and the Friday Night Sports Bar with me, Dom Aldworth. You're almost welcome this evening, wherever you might be listening, in your car, at home, on the internet, wherever you are in the world. Coming up over the next hour, Oscar Pistorius gets bail in South Africa. Barry Bateman from Eyewitness News on the ground there will be linking up with me in about 5 minutes. Six Nations Rugby is back on the agenda. Twickenham plays host to England versus France. And joining me on the line is former England prop Steve Redfern. He's going to talk to us about this weekend's Six Nations Championships, about something he's involved in Mallorca as well during March. So stay tuned for that. All that and plenty more to come. Golf, tennis, rugby, boxing. Richard Tilsley and Stuart Joseph in the studios with me as well. And of course, you out there on the airwaves.
Friday Sports Bar with Dom Aldworth.
The Monday Night Sports Bar with Dom Aldworth.
Join me and my panel, Richard Tilsley and Stuart Joseph, every Monday for the new edition of the Monday Night Sports Bar, live from the Talk Radio Europe studios from 7 till 8 p.m.
The Monday Night Sports Bar.
You just never know who might drop in. See you in both of them. A warm welcome to the Sports Bar. David Campese, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Bjorn Borg, thanks very much for talking to me. Joining me live, he's Gary Player.
Dom, nice to be able to speak to all three of you today.
These guys have been waiting for this with bated breath, I can assure you, for the last couple of weeks.
The Friday Sports Bar with Dom Aldworth on Talk Radio Europe.
Well, welcome to the Friday Night Sports Bar. We're going to get straight down to South Africa, where we've got Eyewitness Pretoria correspondent Barry Bateman. Barry joins me on the line now. Barry, please tell us what have been the latest developments in South Africa with the Oscar Pistorius case.
Well, it was just a couple of hours ago that Oscar Pistorius was released on R1 million bail. He has already been released. He's at a relative's house this evening. The conditions were he had to cough up 100,000 rand immediately to secure his freedom. He'll have to pay the remaining 900,000 rand. I think it's about a 2-week time. The conditions imposed on him are quite strict. He will have to report to a police station twice a week on Monday and Friday. He has to hand in his passport. He's not allowed near an international terminal at an airport. An investigating officer might check on him any time, and he will be subject to routine and unannounced drug and alcohol tests.
Barry, with regards to some of these conditions, I mean, it is effectively like having house arrest. I believe he has to actually apply for permission just to move around the jurisdiction of Pretoria, and if he wishes to go further afield, the same applies.
It's very strict bail conditions. He has to inform his investigating officer if he wants to I think it's the magisterial district he'll be confined to, but that is just pretty much Pretoria, which he'll be able to go. He won't be able to travel down to, he won't be able to coast, to go to Joburg, I think. So it's not going to be easy. Somebody who just more than a week ago, had full freedom, was enjoying a good life in his luxury estate, is now confined. And the other one I might point out is that he's not allowed to go back to the crime scene. So his actual home in the Silver Woods estate, he's not allowed back there anymore. He's going to be spending, until the end of this trial at least, at a relative's home.
An undisclosed location is what the magistrate said is where he will be based. Is there any speculation as to where that undisclosed location might be? I mean, I assume this evening he's going to be with some family members, and then when everything dies down, perhaps they will move to a more private location?
I know where it is. It's in Waterkloof. There's already a media encampment there busy watching closely. The family has deployed security guards outside just to keep an eye on the pesky press. But he has arrived there. He is with his family. I think it's probably, if you look at the way they reacted after the court ruling, I think it's a happy family reunited. It must have been a tough week for them. But, we understand he is going to be staying there for the foreseeable future.
Barry, I know you've got plenty of commitments tonight because the story is hot and you're in great demand. Just one final question. I had your colleague Alex on our show on Monday night. We've seen all the events unfolding during the course of the week. They've had an opportunity, the defence, to give their side of the story. Has public opinion shifted slightly following the end of the bail hearing now?
No, I think public opinion is still quite divided. Even at court, you had the supporters of Oscar and the detractors. I mean, we had the ANC Women's League there today. Now, they were there to support denying bail. Their reason is that, and the magistrate did make a point of this, and so did the prosecution when they were arguing their case, is that this is a crime against women. And our president, in his State of the Nation address, says that crimes against women and children must be prioritized. And the state is saying that, this is an example of such crime. We shouldn't give bail. So there is that side. They're seeing this as a disappointment that he's been released, that he should remain behind bars. But then the other side, people who still have faith in their icon, international star, somebody who's overcome such adversity. They still love the Oscar Pistorius, and they're confident that his version, that this was an accident, that he didn't intend to kill his girlfriend, they believe that it's got merit.
Barry Bateman, senior correspondent for Eyewitness News in Pretoria. Many thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
That was Barry Bateman joining from South Africa. All fascinating stuff, but a warm welcome and a good evening to you guys. I haven't had you both in the studio for some time now at the same time, and it's a pleasure to have you in, Stu. I wish I could say the same for you, Richard. Oh, you're not saying anything now? Oh my God, he's got into a complete sulk. How are you, Stu?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I left. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to come back to Spain, and I got to tell you, it is freezing in London.
Should we try and get a word out of him now? Good evening, Richard.
I was just enjoying watching you corpse for a moment, Dominic.
I was checking to see whether the microphones were working.
You sat there with a completely dumbstruck look on your face. Oh my God, what am I going to say now? He's not going to say anything.
No script.
You were quiet there for 10 seconds. I mean, it must be the most you've been quiet in your whole life.
You, in fact, also went the same colour as the mic light, Dom.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No,
like Stu did the other day.
How have you been anyway?
Pair of blushing beauties, the pair of you.
Oh, goodness me, here we go. How's your week been anyway?
Oh,
what have you been up to?
Not too bad.
Writing?
Yep.
Yeah. What else? Oh, you go back to your one-word answers now again, are you?
Well, what else could you say?
What do you reckon, guys? Oscar Pistorius has got bail. We asked him about public opinion shifting in South Africa. Now that they've had an opportunity over the last 3 to 4 days to give their side, we've seen some pretty serious holes in the prosecution, with the leading investigator being removed from the case because he's got 7 murder charges against him coming up.
Attempted
murder charges, beg your pardon. It's a serious embarrassment for the South African police force that we've seen happening in the last 48 hours.
Can I just ask you something, both of you? If this happened in England, would someone like this have got bail?
He wouldn't get bail.
Well, it's a completely different legal system, isn't it? It happens. It works completely differently in South Africa to what it does in the UK.
I was amazed. I really.
But I mean,
well,
£1 million. It's only £70,000.
Dominic,
it's actually not a lot of money for.
It's not a question of money. It's just the fact that he's been bailed after something like this has happened.
Prior to the end of apartheid, it was, I think, the same legal system as the UK, wasn't it?
It was, correct. Yeah.
And then they changed it.
They changed it. I think they changed it in the sort of 80s. Late 80s, if I'm correct in saying.
Well, apartheid ended, 92, was it? 93?
Well, apartheid ended before 92, 93. That was just when I think most of the world recognised that apartheid had finished. But, I mean, I went to school, boarding school with black, white, Indian people, blue people, pink people, so, and that was in the 80s as well, so I never got subjected to any. Apartheid did effectively finish, I'd probably say mid-80s, when you didn't have just non-white buses and that sort of thing. But anyway, I don't want to spend time wasting...
But, you come back to this Pistorius thing. I mean, whether, he thought it was a burglar or not, the fact is that an innocent girl is dead and he killed her.
Fantastic girl as well, yeah. I mean, she's obviously very well liked in South Africa. A career that was just about to explode on television as well, and a very sad loss, and a very nice family as well. And... yeah, of course our thoughts are with them, and I suppose justice will prevail in the end as to when it's going to come to trial. I believe the 4th of June is when he has to appear in court again officially, when a trial date will be set.
Well, I was listening to a South African lawyer on Radio 4 this afternoon, and he said it wouldn't come to trial for over a year, Dom.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much the general consensus coming out of South Africa.
And said
the legal system is very much like that.
Well, he said it's just overladen. The South African legal system is just overladen with cases. As you know, the crime rate there is absolutely stratospheric. I mean, and and you talk about the policeman. I think that trying to fire on the minibus, I think that's just a sort of a reflection of
apparently drunk as well. Allegedly drunk.
But I mean, South Africa and certain parts of South Africa is now a very violent country.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm sitting here. That's why I'm not there. But let's not talk about South Africa and make it a political show. That's the latest on the Oscar Pistorius. Of course, we will keep you updated if anything interesting does come out of that side. But Oscar Pistorius today got bail, and Tottenham Hotspur have Gareth Bale. You made it through to the next round of the Euro Championships. It wasn't obviously Gareth Bale's goal that sealed it for you in the second leg, but a tremendous result, especially considering what happened to Spurs and the Spurs fans in that horrendous attack in the pub in Lyon the night before.
Yeah, we're getting linked with all these Nazi groups whenever we go to Europe, and I won't go into that. We discussed that before. I think it's just a terrible thing today. But me and Richard disagree with the Spurs performance. I thought in the second half Spurs really dominated. They were very disappointed in the first half, changed tactically a little bit. Lyon did sit back, and I agree with Richard, what Richard said, but, you know, I'm blinded, because when I watch Spurs, you know, I see it the way I see it, whereas Richard is, you know, more unbiased than I am.
Well, I think that the thing is, I think the game was pretty symptomatic of how many games in the Championnat are played, and we've talked about this before. You know, French football is the French.
Say that little phrase, Championnat. What was that?
I said it's fairly symptomatic of how football is played in Le Championnat.
It'd be fantastic, isn't it?
Tremendous.
You speak so well.
Tremendous.
Well, I mean, if you look at most games in the French league, I mean, they end 1-0, you know, 1-1.
But don't take it away from Tottenham.
No, but
They
the thing
won
is,
it in
what
the
happens
second
in French football is that as soon as a team gets a lead, they sit back on that. And I'm really glad to see that Lyon were thoroughly punished for that last night, because I think it's an absolute insult to the fans.
I think the fans and the team look
But
sick.
one thing that is, I think, clearly evident is that when they went for it, they were the much better team in the first half.
They were better in the first half, I agree. But then Spurs are getting... Normally Spurs are a first half team. This year we're doing it all in the second half. The manager seems to sit back, see what the aggression of the other team is. In the second half we seem to go to town. It's happening all the time now.
Well, I think that, as I said before, I mean, they knew that 1-0 would take them through. They thought they could sit back on that lead and go through on the away goals. And I'm really glad that it's a strategy that didn't pay any dividends for them, because I think it just cheats the football fans who go and pay to watch the game.
Well, we've got Inter Milan in the next round. I'm looking forward to that. Should be a fabulous evening.
Yeah, it's a cracking encounter.
Last time we played, remember Gareth Bale just absolutely destroyed them. You know, please God it happens again. But it was going to be a cracking game. It's the match of the last 16.
But for me, what's really interesting after this initial round of Champions League matches is that Spanish football, which has been much vaunted over the last few years, and I suppose rightly so when you look at you know, the wins that the national team have had in the World Cup and the European Cup, and also, you know, the success of Barcelona
And Atletico Madrid as well in Europe.
and Atletico Madrid in the Europa Cup last year. But what we could find ourselves with is no Spanish representation in the next round.
Well, Atletico were left the tournament or the competition last night, didn't
They've got
they?
a-
That's in the
Levante.
Europa, but I mean in the Champions
sorry.
League.
The Champions League.
I mean, I spoke last week about how improved AC Milan were, and that you could not read anything into the results that, you know, they had previously in the Champions League against Malaga, for instance, when they were lying 12th, 13th in Serie A. They're now third in Serie A, and they're playing very, very good football.
I think they've got the best form of everyone in Serie A at the moment. They're playing. They're winning games.
Well, they're 13 games unbeaten now. Or actually,
Yeah.
sorry, in Serie A, they're 12 matches unbeaten.
12 match
AC,
unbeaten.
yeah.
What a bit of form that is.
And you know, I thought it was a typically Italian approach to that game with Barcelona. And you know, the old Catanecci style of play, and you know, once again, I think that in many ways AC Milan learnt from the victory that Inter had over them a few years ago, and to see that people like Messi restricted to one shot, I think Iniesta
Incredible,
had a
isn't it?
couple. At no time did you really think that Barcelona were going to threaten.
I think the
AC
game's
Milan.
nicely balanced. I wouldn't write Barcelona off or Real Madrid at the moment. I mean, these games could go either way.
I think 2-0 though is a very dangerous score.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, all they need is one away goal, and suddenly, you know, Barcelona have got to score 4.
Where would you put your money today?
I would put it with AC Milan.
Okay.
I was very, very unimpressed with Barcelona, and sometimes you wonder whether, you know, the lack of really good quality opposition in La Liga, you know, hurts teams like Barcelona when they go and then play, you know, better opposition from other European leagues in Champions League.
And 2 exports with
I was
boys
going to
scoring
say,
the
you guys
goals.
made that
What about
point,
that?
and
Incredible.
the two exports with
Incredible.
players, yeah. Fantastic
Really.
stuff, yeah. So, yeah, good start to that particular tie for AC Milan. They're going to have to defend like their lives depend on it against Barcelona at the Camp Nou. Malaga, unfortunately, were, for me, slightly disappointing. We were here live broadcast for Talk Radio Europe. The scoreline suggests that they very much are in the tie. But a very disappointing attacking performance by Malaga. The defence held up particularly well, but I don't know what you guys made of Malaga's performance.
I thought it was very one-sided. I thought Porto dominated. I think Malaga, I don't know, for whatever reason, they seem to be overwhelmed by the occasion. I think they just got so dominated by Porto. But Porto are a decent team. They're running away with they're top of their league, and they've got a lot of experience in Europe as well.
Joined with Benfica, 14 points clear of the next best side.
Well, that's not a bad position to be in. And
not a huge amount of competition, though.
No.
No, that is true. Yeah. But they've had experience in Europe over the years, haven't they? In fact, Porto, I'm looking here, had 62% of the game to Malaga's 38, 16 shots for Porto and 1 shot Malaga. It shows you how dominated they were.
I was going to say, looking at those statistics, as the Porto manager and the Porto players, you'd be, and a home advantage as well in those stats, you'd be slightly disappointed.
To only score 1 goal.
To only score the 1 goal, yeah.
And don't underestimate Malaga. That's the first match Malaga have lost in Europe this year. And I wouldn't, again, they're going to be the home crowd. It's going to be a most incredible evening down there. I wouldn't take anything away from Malaga. I think they can still do it. But I've got a feeling Porto will get a goal, and then it destroys the whole. I don't think they get 3 goals, Malaga, against Porto. I think they've got to stop them scoring and get a couple of goals.
Yeah, well, I think that basically, they more or less achieved what Pellegrini's set out to do, which was to limit them to as few goals as possible.
But he's done the job.
And the one thing about the Dragon Stadium in Porto, it's an extremely difficult place. I think the last time they got beaten at home was by Chelsea a couple of years ago, or last year.
That's intimidating place to go in.
They have a very, very good record there. It's quite an intimidating. Teams say that they find it quite an intimidating place to go. So.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see the return. I'm looking forward to it, especially the commentary as well.
The fact that I think he played Rocky Santa Cruz up front.
He hasn't got anything. To me, I like Saviola better than Santa Cruz, personally. There's not enough bite up front. Joaquim's playing very well, but the guy's an aged player. We know there's not the actual squad is not big enough for Europe, I don't think. But they've done incredibly well. You can't knock Malaga. They've done absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I thought also, I think that they've lost a couple of players on the left. Obviously, Monreal to Arsenal and Elisu to injury. And, those two players had a really, really good understanding. And when they did play together, which hasn't been that much this season because of Monreal had an injury as well, it's given a whole new dimension to the Malaga play. Whereas now they look a bit sort of lopsided in some ways.
Well, they're playing against top opposition now. You're getting to the last 16 or the last 8 of the major championship. You're playing top Premier teams. We were talking about the Arsenal-Bayern game the other day. People having a go at Arsenal. That Bayern team, I thought, was terrific.
Terrific performance. I watched the first half actually here in the studio while the Malaga game was on, and I thought Bayern Munich were absolutely outstanding. That was a statement of a side that can definitely go all the way in the competition. They could have been 3-0 up at half-time. They missed a header just to the right of one of the posts, but absolutely everywhere from the back, midfield, extremely well organised. I don't know if you saw any of that game, Rich.
I did indeed, and to me, what it really emphasises is just the strength there is now in the Bundesliga, and whereas many people, over the last few years we've talked about, Spain dominating. Well, these things can often be cyclical, and I remember in the late 70s, the Bundesliga was the place to play. And a lot of the big money transfers, if you think of Kevin Keegan went to Hamburg, Tony Woodcock went to Cologne.
I do remember that era. Yeah.
There's and I think probably the same is about to happen. We're about to see another resurgence of German football.
Well, they've done well. They've been winning the major world championships, haven't they? Doing very, very well, to say the least. I know Spain have been winning stuff, but West Germany is always up there all the time. And they've got a very strong squad, Ribery, Martinez, Muller, Cruz, Robin. They've got the names. The problem is that individually the players are better than the Arsenal players. On the
absolutely.
night.
Every single little battle on the park and in defence and
they were winning
in midfield,
everything.
They were winning absolutely everything. And every time Arsenal got anywhere near the penalty box, their defence was always extremely well organised.
Yeah, but I'm a big Spurs fan. I'm not knocking I will knock Arsenal, but I really felt sympathetic. All the stuff that's been coming out in the papers, they were beaten by a really good team. They would have thrashed Spurs on the night, I'll tell you that, and I say that just sitting here. They were blank.
It was a serious
very,
statement. Certainly
good.
over that first 45 minutes, it was a serious
statement.
statement.
Well, I think Bayern have got a point to prove. They feel as though they were robbed last season of the Champions League trophy in their own stadium. And they also felt that they were robbed of their own equivalent to the FA Cup when Dortmund beat them. And again, they felt that they should have won that. So they're a team with a lot to prove. But the very fact that Pep Guardiola is moving to Barcelona, is moving to Bayern Munich at the end of the season, to me indicates that he obviously knows something.
They've got a pretty good future coming.
We don't.
But also, they've got that great news to look forward to. They're so far ahead in the Bundesliga as well that really their main focus now for the next couple of months is simply the Champions League. So they're going to be in a really good place mentally, aren't they?
They are. I was just want to ask you something. I mean, what I don't understand. No, you'll correct me, obviously. I mean, Barcelona play a totally different football to what Bayern do, I think. I think Bayern is much faster, much quicker. They break quicker. What is he going to do? Is he going to take a bit of the Barcelona and mix it with a bit of the Bayern and get this complete picture of an outfit? Because Barcelona dominate, but don't score the goals for their domination.
Well, I mean...
Well, they have done this season.
Outside the league.
I mean, the 58
this is one thing
goals
that
I was careful what I say there. I'll bite my tongue when I say
There's
that.
one thing I have said about Barcelona, and a lot of people have kind of criticised me for saying so, but to me, Barcelona lack an offensive threat when Messi is not playing well.
Well, they haven't got a recognised forward, have they, really? I mean, they're all playing it, they're all midfield players.
Yeah, and I think that's what we saw on against AC Milan was representative of that. I mean, Messi was kept very quiet, and they didn't really pose any real great attacking threat.
Oh, they were very disappointed. Very.
Gentlemen, we've got to go to a commercial break in a couple of minutes, and we're going to get Steve Redfern, former England rugby international, on the line. Just very quickly, and we're going to come back to the Europa towards the end of the show, but Galatasaray Schalke, it started very well for Galatasaray. Drogba having a hand in the goal, one apiece. They can still go to Schalke, to Germany, and come away with a victory in this tie, can't they?
They can, but very unlikely. I thought it was just it was a hit-and-miss sort of game. It didn't do a lot for me. I watched the highlights. I didn't see the actual game, but as far as I'm concerned, I think Schalke will get through in the second leg with a home advantage.
All right.
Schalke, great performance by again, another German team looking very, very strong for the Champions League.
German football strong, like you said.
Very strong, and also Borussia Dortmund, a really good team as well.
So we could see a completely reverse situation where the Germans dominate, like the Spanish have done so in recent months, and also a little bit of speculation as well. Schalke weren't too happy, questioning the Drogba signing as well. I think they've made a formal application to FIFA as to whether he is eligible for Champions League football, but of course he hadn't been paid for 3 months at his club. A couple of little legal wranglings going on there, but obviously the story as it unfolds, we'll be able to bring it to you through Talk Radio.
Chinese football is in an absolutely dire state. I mean,
especially after that.
Well, the main problem is all the match fixing and bribery problems they have at the moment. And there was an announcement today that the Chinese Football Association is hiring David Beckham to give them a PR makeover. And they're going to...
Surely he hasn't agreed to that.
Yeah. There's a very good possibility. They're going to pay him an absolute fortune to go over there and try and be the public face of Chinese football.
I wonder if he's going to give that to charity.
I don't knock him.
I've never ever knocked him on the show. I think he's a fantastic player, a great guy.
And talking of David Beckham, by the way, very interesting
he could be
match this weekend in the Championnat,
Joey Barton, yeah,
which is Marseille who are in third place and PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, who are in first, and it's being portrayed in the French press as the angel versus the devil.
Joey Barton versus David Beckham. That's going to be thrilling stuff.
The angel, by the way, is David Beckham.
Of course, absolutely. Like you're an angel as well, aren't you? Yeah.
And does that make Stuart the devil? Does it?
Well, no, I couldn't quite paint him.
Whatever you like.
Let's go to a commercial break.
Make you the devil?
Well, that might very well be me. We're going to see the other side of these messages. Steve Redfern, former England rugby international, joins us on the phone. So stay tuned.
Tomato dribbles it past Mozzarella and loses it to Beefy. Beefy runs with it, goes on the counter-attack of Beefy, and Beefy scores and the crowd goes wild!
It's the Friday Sports Bar on Talk Radio Europe with Dom Aldworth.
Well, welcome back to the Friday Night Sports Bar. Big weekend of rugby, Six Nations rugby. It's very appropriate that we actually have a former England and Leicester Tigers rugby international. Steve Redfern joins us on the line now. Not necessarily to talk about the Six Nations, although we're going to get his opinion. But in a couple of months' time, Steve's involved. If you remember, we had him on last year in a big project, a rugby project on the beaches of Mallorca. Steve, welcome to the show this evening.
Good evening.
How are you, Steve? All okay?
Yeah, it's great. Apart from the snow, now we're in England. We're sitting with snow flurries. So I just flown back from Mallorca last night and come back to this cold weather. So just getting back used to it.
Well, Steve, it was almost a year ago that we actually had you on. A year's gone by. You're back in action again in Mallorca for a beach rugby competition. Tell the listeners out there, bearing in mind Mallorca's tuned in nowadays as well, what's going to be happening?
Well, the event runs on the 4th and 5th of May. We have an opening party on the Friday night, which will be the 3rd in Mambo's, which the theme that my referee manager has chosen is doctors and nurses. So that should be a fun opening party to get everybody in the swing of things. Then on the Saturday, we move on to the beach and we play pool games from probably, I think it was going to work out from 1 o'clock right through way till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the players will the likes of Magaluf returning again on the Sunday to run off those hangovers, and we get through to the final, which should take place in front of Crusoe's at about 5 o'clock on Sunday evening.
Well, last year was a tremendous success, Steve, and I'm sure this year is going to be just as big a success. How many teams have you actually got registered so far to take part?
Well, it's looking like it's going to be a lot bigger than last year. Last year we had 38 teams, a mixture of men's and women's. This year, already registered, we have 20 men's teams and 10 ladies teams. So we're on the way to another big event, which is building every year we run it. It's now in the 6th year.
Steve, there might be, I'm sure there's some listeners down here on the Costa del Sol or the Costa Blanca, maybe even in Mallorca, I doubt that aren't actually aware this is going on. They are now. They might be rugby fans. Is there still an opportunity for ladies or guys to put a team together and actually get registered for this event?
Yeah, with the entries are open till mid-April, and so just go to our website, which is www.mallorcabeachrugby.com. The Mallorca is spelled the English way, and all the information is on there. There's contact details, and there is a local Spanish contact details there as well. So anybody that's interested in taking part, it's a fantastic weekend of rugby, entertainment, and just jolly good fun.
So that's www.mallorcabeachrugby.com. They can register there. You guys, anybody out there listening on the Costa del Sol, if you think you're a bit of a rugby player, get your group of lads together, or the ladies as well. You're most welcome to enter a team as well, and get yourself onto the Mallorca Beach Rugby website and register for that. Steve, will you be taking part in this event yourself? I don't recall you doing last year, if I'm correct in saying.
No, I had a game 2 years ago, and I need to concentrate on the organisation now, I think.
And it looks, I had a Suzanne, who I know you work very closely with in Mallorca. She kindly sent me a link on YouTube of, I think it was last year's event, and I had a look at that, and I highly recommend anybody going there to perhaps take their own headache tablets. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just a great big party. We try to keep it as a social event. Lots of amateur teams come. Everybody just comes to have fun. We have stag and hen parties taking part who are associated and play rugby. They come across and just enjoy the fun. It's a one big party a whole weekend.
Sounds fantastic, Steve. Steve, while we've got you on the line as well, of course, you're a player of great experience from the past. A massive weekend of Six Nations rugby. In fact, I think it was Six Nations last year as well, and we spoke a little bit about some of the games, and it's a huge game tomorrow at Twickenham. Māori Tulagi versus Bastaroo in the centre. Really looking forward to that one.
Well, I mean, France has not really started, but you can never discount France. They're a team that are very unpredictable. You know, they've had a bad start. They're bottom of the championship, but against England, old enemy, you never know. You just don't know what sort of French team is going to turn up.
Just looking at that French selected side by Philippe Saint-André, the former French player, to me it looks a side with much more balance there. Morgan Parra's back at scrum half. Trent Duke is back in the fly half position, but Wesley Fofana is back in the centre. He's been picked out of position for me on the wing. It looks a much more balanced and a more attacking French side to what we've seen in the opening two games.
Well, yeah, I think France have got to do something because he has been playing players out of position, and at top level, yeah, players can adapt, but that sort of pressure is just extra pressure for the players on the day. So I just think that France have gone with a more settled team, settled positions, and look to take on England. Because England has started pretty well, really. I mean, Lancaster started with this team and has built it up to what it is now, and everything is going well. and the French will be delighted to put a spanner in that works, I'm sure.
Steve, I'd like to talk about that French side. I'm a South African rugby fan, so it's great to see a strong England rugby side. A year ago, obviously a lot of inexperience there. Stuart Lancaster really becoming a full-time coach for England at that stage. Move the clock forward 12 months. I mean, we've got a victory against New Zealand under their belt, a great start to the Six Nations, and a pool of players that I think probably Lancaster and his selection panel have problems picking every week because of competition for places. Do you believe, certainly I believe, that England are in a pretty good place now for the Rugby World Cup coming up? Do you?
Yeah, I think he's brought in a lot of youngsters and he's stuck with them, and I think he's quite level-headed, and nobody's really got carried away with the New Zealand win. Yes, it's always great to win against New Zealand, but I don't think he's got carried away with it, and everybody's been sort of kept on the level, and they're working towards the World Cup, which is what everybody now is working towards.
Steve, a selection which surprised me slightly today. Courtney Laws, obviously when he's fit in the second row, is a marvellous young player, great athlete, but he's going to be playing at number 6 tomorrow. What do you make of that?
Well, he's a good athlete. I mean, he can play back row and second row. I mean, he's a guy that can carry ball, and he's been putting in some hard work, hard grafting in the time he's been playing. So I think he'll adapt okay, and I can't see that being a weakness in the England team, really.
Steve, I've got a couple of colleagues here sitting in the studio, and just before we got you on the phone, I don't know, Richard, I might want to ask you. It's just an interesting decision with regard to Sergio Parisi, so I'll just bring Richard in here.
Well, one of the things that many people have been talking about, Steve, is the length of bans that are given to players for various offences, and one thing that has been talked about is the discrepancy that Healy has got with only a 2-week ban when he tried to when he stamped on Dan Cole and could very well have easily broken his leg, and Sergio Parisi, who's now been banned for the rest of the tournament for insulting the referee. And the two crimes, I mean, the Healy stamp appears to the public a lot worse than Parisi, so why would they give a much sort of lengthier ban to Parisi for that?
Well, rugby's got this long-term tradition that everybody respects a referee in rugby, and it's very, very rare you see a player actually talking back to a referee, unlike in soccer. So they're taking the line that, you know, nobody should address the referee in that manner, and probably that's why they've inflicted the ban that they have done. The foul play is assessed on what level it is, but they really do take a dim view about insulting officials or anything to do with officials.
Thomas, coming back to the foul play, do you think rugby is over-officiated these days? And you know, sometimes the fisticuffs, which used to be very much part and parcel of the game, is an element that people still enjoy seeing occasionally, especially when it's a very intense, competitive game, and you know, they're perhaps over-officiating it, being a little too picky as to what...
I think they've tightened the game up a lot over the last few years. I mean, when I was playing, everything sort of went, and if you got away with it, you were lucky. But now there's cameras everywhere, as you say, and you can't really get away with anything. But I think the game is getting faster, stronger, and more spectators for. See, there's more people watching the game now. So, you know, for the image of the game, I think they've got to tighten up on that. I suppose what's annoying to players, especially when you're playing, is when all these touchline decisions, and now they're going back and looking at seeing if there was an incident before tries are scored, and it's taking longer and longer, and the games are getting longer. But I think in the long run it's probably for the best, because the game does need to keep a clean image, and yeah, I think some of the decisions they're making are for the better. But probably they need to do the decisions quicker.
Steve, quick one before we let you go. We're going to put you on the spot. England or France tomorrow?
England.
You're going to have to go with that one. Steve,
I'm going to have to go with that, yes.
Thanks very much for your professional opinion there on tomorrow's Six Nations. But more importantly, best wishes and best of luck for the 4th, 5th and 6th.
Steve, what about Scotland-Ireland, which I think is a
Scotland-Ireland. I think Ireland, because I think Scotland are still pre-building and getting used to Johnson's way of coaching, and I just think Ireland will have that slight edge.
Well, there you go. If you're a betting man and you're listening out there, go with Steve's recommendations. And then the 4th, the 5th and the 6th of May, the big beach rugby event in Mallorca. Steve's organising it. He's going to be there. It's www.mallorcabeachrugby.com. If you're looking to join, get a team together, ladies or men, you can look at that website. You can register them, or if you're driving and you don't have a pen, you can get in touch with Talk Radio Europe and we'll pass on that information for you. Steve, hopefully we can have a chat closer to the date as well, just to remind everybody what's going on in Mallorca on the beach on the 4th, 5th and 6th of May. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Take care. Cheers. That's former Rugby England and Leicester international Steve Redfern, just talking about his event down in Mallorca on the beach, and we'll remind you about that event closer to the time. Talking about that island fixture, Rich, Paddy Jackson, young 21-year-old Ulster fly-half, has actually been selected ahead of Ronan O'Gara.
That was amazing. I couldn't believe it because, I mean, Declan Kidney, probably one of the most conservative of all the coaches. And for him to pick young Paddy Jackson ahead of Ronan O'Gara, I mean, you know, the legend that he is.
Well, he's been playing some very good rugby for Ulster. He's got Francois Pienaar, Ruan Pienaar, beg your pardon, playing scrum half there, and he's playing some of his best rugby of his career at scrum half. So he's getting a pretty decent rugby education at the moment, playing with a guy who's got 40-odd, 50-odd caps to his name international-wise.
Well, I suppose that's really the reason behind Kidney's thinking. I mean, which is contrary to what he said at the beginning of the Six Nations. But I think what he wants to do is try and release the backs. And let's be honest, O'Gara had a very, very poor game against England.
Yeah, he did actually. When he came on, he was shocking actually in those sort of conditions where he's normally at his best as well.
Absolutely, and you know, but I suppose he's 36. You know, probably his best years are almost certainly behind him. And, you know, but yet again, I mean, I think that some of the changes that England have made for this test with France are highly judicious. I mean, I was very unimpressed with Tom Young's as hooker against France. Some of his line and throwing was absolutely shocking.
Very difficult conditions though too, but then it's international rugby, and you expect it to be better.
As soon as Hartley came on, he brought a much greater degree of control to it, and I thought he was also he adds a bit more in the scrum as well.
Twickenham, Bradley Barrett, Manu Tulagi against Bastareaud and Fofana in the centre. That is going to be a cracking battle in midfield.
Well, I can understand why Lancaster's made the call. I mean, he's, you know, Bastareaud. I mean, I wasn't particularly impressed with Bastareaud, though, you know, against...
He didn't have a great game against Wales, I think it was.
No.
He had a pretty shocking, but he's been playing some top-class rugby for Toulon, who I think are sitting top of the top 14 at the moment in France, and he actually is playing some of his best club rugby this season. So
yeah, I mean, he reminds me a bit like of Ma Nonu in some ways. I mean, that's...
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
You know, same, you know... quite short or relatively short for low centre of gravity, but enormous bulk and very, very difficult to bring down. Pretty much like Tuilagi, and so it is like for like. But I think the game will be won in the last 20 minutes. I mean, and we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and which is the lack of conditioning of the French players.
2005 was the last time in the Six Nations Championships that France came away from Twickenham with a victory. If a French side turns up that we know...
They have got Tran-Duc. He's
back in fly-half. Morgan Parra's back at scrum-half. 7 changes to the French team for this year. Vincent Clerc, the leading try-scorer, is back on the wing as well, which slots Fofana back in the centre, which is his preferred position and the position he plays his best rugby at. For me, a much more balanced side that we're seeing there from the French. If they turn up and they play the sort of flair rugby, do you think this young England side can cope with it?
Yeah, I do, definitely.
Are you going to go for an England win?
Yeah, I am going to, because we've got plenty of flair players ourselves, and I think Lancaster's got more options off the bench as well.
Well, that's Six Nations Rugby tomorrow. England versus France. We've got also tomorrow. We've got Scotland versus Ireland.
That's Sunday.
And then that's on Sunday. And then tomorrow you've got the Welsh travelling to Italy. No Sergio Parisi, the captain. He's been suspended for until the end of the Six Nations. But he's got an appeal on Monday, which he's going to be taken. But he's a big loss to the Italians, isn't he?
Huge loss. I mean, he is by far and away their best player. Has been for the last few years. And also provides the leadership and the decision making, and which I wonder where that's going to come from in his absence. You've also got to say that Wales, can very much build on their win against France last week, and I think it's going to be a tough game for Italy.
rugby league, Union to rugby league.
No,
beg your pardon.
I do fancy Scotland on Sunday.
You do fancy Scotland over
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm so impressed with this young fullback, this Hogg. I'm absolutely convinced that he's going to get that ticket to for the Lions tour if he keeps on showing
they
the
lose
form.
forwards, if they put a little bit of pressure on the new number 10, he might fold under pressure on the international stage. Only time will tell. But rugby league fans, and I know there are one or two of you out there that do listen in, massive game tonight, the Carnegie World Club Challenge. This decides who is the best club rugby league side in world rugby. The Leeds Rhinos take on Melbourne as well. That's a massive game. And of course, Super League continues this weekend. You've got the Bradford Bulls versus St Helens, Hull versus Warrington Wolves, Bradford Bulls versus, I mentioned that already, haven't I? Castleford Tigers versus the Catalan Dragons, who've had a pretty good start to the season. Wakefield Wildcats are hosting the Huddersfield Giants, and Salford City Reds host Hull KR. That is your Super League action. We need to go to a commercial break, and we're going to bring Stu back in to have a look at some of the football that's coming up this weekend.
Sports Bar with Dom Aldworth on Talk Radio Europe.
Welcome back to the last part of the show. There's quite an interesting discussion we were having off air there, but I don't think we'll bring it onto the live part of the show, Rich. We'll
it was about sport.
Sorry?
It was about sport.
It was about sport, but you can't say what you were going to say.
Why not?
Well, go on then. But then you're on your own, mate.
Okay, Stuart was asking about rugby league, okay, and the difference, and I said, well, basically, it's the working class version of the game.
Okay. All right.
And you all threw your hands up in horror and said you can't say that, and I said, well, why not? Because it's true.
Okay, well, shall we move on now? Lovely weather we've been having lately. We know we didn't get a chance.
And I know there's people who are fans of it. I'm sorry, but it is an inferior version of rugby union, and one of the reasons that we don't talk about it.
Turn your microphone off very shortly now.
It is. I mean, it's.
Do you want to say a little bit more?
Well, I mean, as you know, I've got lots of. In Australia, it's absolutely huge,
massive, isn't it?
And I, when I go down and see the family, and I tell them that, they all absolutely outraged. But it's, you know.
Alongside probably quite a few listeners there this evening. But never mind, he doesn't mean any harm. He's actually an extremely nice guy. I can give you a description so you can...
I'm sure most of the listeners would agree as well.
Most what?
Most of the listeners would agree.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, it is. I mean.
We've only got 7 or 8 minutes left, guys, and we know that Spurs did particularly well in the Europa Cup. We know Chelsea are through as well. Liverpool, pretty gallant effort there from Liverpool, but they just couldn't get over the line. But Suarez really continues to play outstanding football, doesn't he?
He's playing absolutely tremendous. Probably Player of the Year, I think. He must go into the hat for the Player of the Year. He's absolutely brilliant. They're just a little bit unlucky. They're playing well with Liverpool, just something missing there. And Newcastle did tremendous as well to qualify, winning 1-0 away. So,
in fact, we've mentioned Liverpool, but I can't believe we haven't heard from Steve.
No, we haven't. I mean, he even calls us when he's having a massage, doesn't he?
Steve, phone in if you're out there, phone in.
But if you notice, he only ever calls us when they lose.
Well,
I won't remind you they lost, didn't they?
Hang on,
well, they didn't go through, but I must say, I think Liverpool are getting better and better.
Well, they had a great win on Monday night, wasn't it? It was a quality performance on Monday night in the Premier League, wasn't it?
Here he is, it's Steve. Was that 5-0?
That's Swansea Reserves. That was Swansea Reserves.
You're live on Talk Radio Europe?
Good evening. I'd just like to say that I was listening to an excellent show and I didn't really want to disturb you.
Because we were eulogising about your team, no doubt, Steve.
Well, no, it's nothing to do with the eulogising. To be fair, at the moment now, if Man United win and they buy that chappie from Real Madrid, I don't like mentioning his name because I think he's just an ugly strumpet. I just want to know if we don't qualify for Europe, will Suarez go?
Well, you would have thought on the sort of form that he's displaying at the moment that he'll have some offers. Of course he will.
Yeah,
well, I've read in the paper that he's the number one target of Pep Guardiola for Bayern Munich.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because at the moment now, we can't afford to let him go, and if we don't qualify for the UEFA Cup, which is the most we can achieve, I don't think he's going to stay.
Well,
it's only my opinion, mind you, but I'd just like to put that forward.
I tend to agree. I agree with you, Steve. I don't think he will stay because a player of his quality wants to test himself against the very best, and that means playing Champions League football. And that's not going to happen for Liverpool next season.
And one other thing is, could I just throw in that there might not be an outright champion in rugby, because the French could beat the English, and it could be maybe 3 teams on the same points.
Yeah.
I just like to throw that one open. It's a possibility.
Absolutely.
George.
Absolutely. It's
But
more
I
than a possibility.
won't hold the air because I know you've got no time left. I'll continue to listen, but thank you very much.
Cheers, Steve.
Thank you, bye.
Well, he's absolutely right about the rugby. If France, definitely the right French team turns up, they can win. But let's just focus very quickly on what we've got coming up football-wise this weekend, Stu, because as usual, we're running out of time very quickly. But we've got a cup final this weekend. We've got a Milan derby this weekend as well, haven't we?
We have. We've got Milan v Inter Milan. It's going to be a cracking game, especially Milan in the form they're in. There's some great games. There's also, we must talk about Malaga just briefly. They've got a very hard game against Real Betis away, and they've got to keep winning games if they want to qualify next year if all goes well with them. And they've got to be careful because in the last 3 matches of the season, they've got Real Madrid and Barcelona away. So they won't be looking to pick up points there. They'll be unexpected if they do. So
Betis have been on a bad run of form, though, haven't they? I think they've lost 3 of their last 4 games.
I think they have. I think you're quite right. But the thing is, they are only just below Malaga. And Malaga have got to keep being, they've got to try and keep points away from these teams. It's going to be very close, this 4th place, ever so close. The weekend, there's some great games in the UK, in particular, which I'm looking forward to. You've got Boston v Top, Queen's Park Rangers and Manchester United, Manchester City v Chelsea, 2 plays 3, and Newcastle and Southampton, 16 and 15, which is like a relegation game. And it looks like an exciting weekend. We throw these games up all the time. Monday night, West Ham United v Spurs. It's a great programme. Just briefly, going back to the Liverpool game we were just talking about, that Swansea team was like a secondary team what they put out that night.
Well, it's understandable. I mean, they're 1 week away from the biggest game in the club's history. They're not going to jeopardise their star quality players for what is, I suppose, really a fairly inconsequential league match against Liverpool.
No, but the strange thing was, when I was watching the game at the end, it was like the fans didn't enjoy the game at all. I mean, there's 10 minutes to go and the ground was empty, which you don't normally see at Liverpool. They normally stay to the end, especially when they're winning. They may leave before the game, but it seemed like the fans were disappointed with the whole way the game.
Well, some people criticised Swansea for, and in particular Laudrup for the team he fielded, but I don't blame him at all. I mean,
it's the biggest game in the history coming up this
week. They've never ever won a tournament.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you there. Just going back to Michael Laudrup, I mean, there must be some clubs out there in Europe that are watching his progress.
Ian Wright has come out this
some
week
big clubs,
and said that he should be the next Arsenal manager.
Yes, I read that today. So,
there's almost an unwritten rule in management that if a better job comes your way, take it. Because they can cast you aside as quickly.
The thing is, though, I think there's a certain loyalty that Arsenal owe to Wenger, and certainly Wenger has repaid the loyalty that they've shown in him. And he's been offered some pretty amazing posts, whilst he's been at Arsenal, but he's turned them down because he's wanted to honour his contract. So I think if they're going to make a change, it'll be at the end of next year. And I think also they'll want Laudrup to have at least 1 more season in English football because one swallow a summer doesn't make. So I don't think you can judge a manager just with 1 season in the Premiership.
You've got maybe the hot seat opening up at Manchester City. You've got Tottenham Hotspur as well. They're going to be looking for a decent manager.
Oh, come on.
Are you biting? You're not biting.
No, I'm not.
Well, I think Mancini is definitely.
And Chelsea looks like Abramovich has been here, by the way, for the last 10 days.
Well, I know Paul Breen
apparently he's been down here.
Was twittering, I think, today and saying that he'd seen.
Apparently he's down here trying to negotiate for Isco and for Pellegrini as well. I got a phone call this morning from a source down here, and I know it wasn't Paul. Probably somebody a little bit more reliable than that, and that apparently that is part of the negotiations as to why he's down here.
Really?
Though I think, if given a choice, I think Pellegrini would prefer to go to Man City than to Chelsea.
I mean, to have a chairman like that, you're really playing with fire, aren't you? I mean, you're under terrible. To go, I tell you something. I don't think he'd go to Chelsea. I think if he went anywhere, I think he'd go to Manchester City. He doesn't need the work. He's the guy's got a great game anyway.
And there's been a lot of articles in the press, recently, with a lot of managers saying, would we want to go to Chelsea with working under Abramovich? Where you don't have any security of tenure, and you're very much open to the whims of the owner.
He's got a bad track record. Can I just touch on one thing?
Yeah, you've got. I was going to say, you've got about a minute.
Just very brief. League One, Di Canio. Did you read about the Di Canio?
Yeah, last night.